Good evening. Welcome to everybody. I am Todd Christie, Speaker of the House, Michigan Dental Association. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Take a look here and see. We've got our participants. I want to see who and where we're at. I want to go through and talk a little bit. We'll give a little bit of time. I know we're about 20 attendees is what we're looking for, so I will do a few things, and that's keep talking until we get over a certain amount. But know that if any of the information here, when we get to the end, you want to go back and look at, which, if you want to fall asleep at night, this is the right information to fall asleep to. We're going to have this in the whole recording from tonight will be available in a little, probably in a week or so. Depends on what they can do. So it'll be available online through the portal from the Michigan Dental Association. So you can go to the House of Delegates. I believe that's where it'll be linked to as well. So we can do that. Let me just see here. All right. Well, let's go through and we're up to 14. We'll let everyone else catch up with us as we go. One thing I learned, I just got back from the American Institute of Parliamentarians, their West Coast practicum. And one of the cool things was, as I sat there, and the first lecture they gave was on how to do a presentation to new delegates and new alternates. I was happy that almost everything that we have in this presentation that I worked on from last year and updated for this year was exactly what they talked about. We're going to try and throw in some nuances as well, some things very particular to the Michigan Dental Association. One question I will ask you, and we've got the chat bar down below, when I switch over to the slide presentation, I'll let you know. I won't be able to see the questions, so if there's any questions that come up throughout, just type those in, and I'll come back to those at the end. If it's something that's a pressing matter, Michelle Nichols-Cruz, your governance manager, is monitoring this, and she'll text me if something comes up that she sees that she wants me to jump back into as well. It's one of the challenges of Zoom and doing these video conferences to make sure I know that once I go live with that, that's the one challenge that we do have with it. Not everything's perfect in this world, so we have that. One last thing, actually, before I click to the slides here, and we'll get, like I said, we're given a couple minutes, I'll tell you about my history and why I enjoy and love what I do as Speaker of the House for the Michigan Dental Association. For me, I started in that same road some of you are at, and I know some of you, I can see some familiar names who've been in a House of Delegates before. Mine, I believe, my first role, I graduated from U of D back in 1996. And 2 years later, I was an alternate delegate to the House of Delegates. I went to a meeting, and like maybe some of you, I went to a meeting, they said, "You look like you can go do this." And I said, "Sure." And then I ended up at a meeting as an alternate delegate. The next year, I was the chair of the delegation from Lakeland. And then soon thereafter, I was lucky enough to serve as the Lakeland Kalamazoo trustee. And so that was a 6-year stint as well. And I just got the bug and didn't stop. I took a break for a couple of years when I served on the ADA Council on Membership, and then came back to the MDA to be on the IFG board until just 3 years ago. I was blessed enough to be elected as the speaker, and now entering and going into my third house this year. So that's where I'm at. I look forward to many of you and getting to meet you in Grand Rapids coming up here, as well as seeing you at this meeting. Terrific, good choice. And then there's another meeting coming up in March that we'll have. So let's go through, and I'm going to click into the slideshow here. Give me just a moment. All right. Now the fun begins, everybody. So we've got about an hour planned out for you tonight. And for me, I want to go through a little bit of what we'll go through and talk about. And again, at the end, if there's any questions that come up, if you want to jot them in the chat, that's terrific. But I'll hit through a lot of the highlights of what we'll see and what you'll see for your first meeting, or for some of you a second or third or some more than that, for what our House of Delegates does for the Michigan Dental Association. So number one on there, acronyms that you will see tonight. We're going to fire through those. Also next we'll go to the MDA House of Delegates, the members' role and powers there. Then the roles of the delegates and alternates, then my role, any of the committees of the House, then talk about the MDA manuals and documents specific to the House of Delegates, a little bit on parliamentary procedure, resolutions and motions, and last, the voting in the House of Delegates. As you go through, and I don't know for some of you where you have served, if you've served in a House before or utilized parliamentary procedure, whether in dental school, whether in college, whether it's a member of a fraternity or sorority or any other group, there are always some nuances. The one thing I will say is that for our Michigan Dental Association, we utilize the Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure, or it's the American Institute of Parliamentarians. That's our presiding documentation that we use for how we follow through. It might be different for those that have heard of Robert's Rules. Nobody really knows what they are, it seems like, from even the people that practice in those. But our standard code has been one that we've utilized in our house, in our association, for a good number of years now, and has served us very well. So let's get moving. All right, acronyms you're going to see, and when you get to the house at the Art of Dentistry in Grand Rapids coming up here at the end of April into May, let's see a couple things you will hear people say, and this way you're going to know the inside lingo. It's always good. House of Delegates. Yep, you're going to hear me say HOD. Usually I'll say the House, but HOD is the one acronym there. The House of Delegates Reference Committee. This would be RC Reference Committee. We're going to talk about that later on as part of the members of what the House has. Next, Board of Trustees, the BOT. That's a fun one. Executive Committee, the EC. And let's see, that was it. Okay, good. That's enough for me too. So what we have here, the composition of the House of Delegates is 102 voting members. And I'm going to ask, hey, Michelle, could you go through and click that screen? I don't think I can, to go through and click mine down, the picture on there as well. I don't know if that's showing up on your screen or not. So what we do have is we have 100 delegates elected by their components, and we have 2 student delegates, one each elected from the ASDA chapter from University of Michigan and University of Detroit Mercy. So we have 102 voting members of that, and that's the delegates. And then they also, each group has the same number of alternate delegates available to the components. Non-voting members of our House of Delegates, so these are officers and members of the board, are also members there, as well as the MDA past presidents. The ADA council members and all MDA committee chairs are all members of the House. Now, they are there, they're able to come up to microphones, they're able to testify, they're able to give their opinion and discussion. They are not able to vote, as they are non-voting members. So what's the role of the House of Delegates? And you can read it right here: support and advance the profession of dentistry and the oral health of the residents of the state of Michigan. They are those, and this is for the House, is one that establishes and supports the mission statement and the bylaws of the association. As such, its purpose is to focus on public policy, legislative advocacy, professional practices, issues, and representation of the members. And really, that's what the House does. It represents the members as we look for the long range for the Michigan Dental Association. But those areas you see, they're public policy, legislative advocacy, and professional practice issues. Think of all that you hear about, you read about in the journal, you look at the website and see, those are where it's focused on. All right. The MDA House of Delegates members' roles. What are the powers of the House of Delegate? Now, this is going to be a lengthy list here. I'm just going to tell you right now. So we're going to go right through them. Advise the board regarding any matter of importance in the association, other than matters involving an amendment to the bylaws. Now, the board will act on all resolutions adopted by the House no later than the second Board of Trustees meeting found the House of Delegates when the resolution was adopted. So let's say we're coming up here in May. A resolution is adopted on May 2nd. Within 2 meetings, the board is going to take care of that, do something regarding that resolution that comes forward. So there is a meeting, actually is immediately following. When I put the gavel down at the end of the House, we have a break. I want to say it's a half-hour break, and the board has its first meeting after the House, where even sometimes we'll dispense and move those to where they need to go. The discussion is there. The second meeting for that board comes up in June at the summer board meeting. So typically everything is taken care of by that second one, pursuant to what we have as the powers here. What else can the House do? Amend the bylaws. The House is in charge of the bylaws for our association, not the board. That's the important part. The bylaws is the overall governing documents we have, and we'll talk more about those later. Next, powers of the House: adopt and amend the standards of ethics and code of professional conduct of our association. You're in charge of your own agenda. You can decide what you want. I will produce one. We could always make changes to it. We do usually have a standard that we follow, but you're in control of your own agenda. And act on any matter. So from the House, any matter that's brought to it by the delegate or the board. So this is what resolutions, we're going to talk about more what those are later. But any matter that comes up that you're able to dispense, either from another delegate, a delegation, meaning a component, or from the board. So you'll see resolutions before you, and you're going to have to deal with them. Last up, actually, last on this page is originate and act on resolutions, just as I said. So anything that comes before you, you're going to have the opportunity to vote yes, vote no. You can be able to go through and send this back to the board or send it to a committee that you set up. There are options that are there. More powers. You elect the officers of the association, so president-elect, who will become the president. You elect the secretary-treasurer. You elect the speaker of the House. You also elect, this year will be the election for the 9th District Trustee to the American Dental Association. And you elect the members of the Board of Trustees. And also you'll be electing, I think that comes up down later, the other election we have this year is for, as always, for the ADA delegates and alternate delegates that represent you at the ADA House of Delegates. Next, develop and adopt and amend its rules of procedures and other procedures for the conduct of House business. We'll come up to this later as part of what the documents are that are under the purview of the House. Establish special committees of the House of Delegates. We've had 2 of those in the past 3 years that we had. One was actually one that helped create, that we looked into doing conferences just like this by video conference and allowing us, instead of meeting in person, to do it this way. That was one. And then 2 years ago, we had a special committee that the House set up regarding evaluation of the performance and of each of the alternate, actually of all delegates and alternates that go to the ADA. That was the one that was 2 years ago. We're filling this back, elect delegates and alternates to the ADA House. And also, number 12, remove any officer or trustee from the office without cause at any meeting of the House upon a 3/4 vote for all casting a legal ballot at that meeting. And there, that comes back up to the ADA District 9 trustee. That's it. All right, so we'll move on to roles of delegates and alternate delegates. They represent their component dental societies and give you unique observations about issues impacting dentistry. Communicate these to the MDA via the House of Delegates. Also, you can communicate with the MDA board as a delegate as well, just sending information in, or as a delegation from your component. That's what the role is getting that information up from the grassroots to the board, because we're only from one area. We might not hear what's going on in yours, what can better help, and what you're looking for assistance in, or seeing trends and challenges that you see looking forward. And we always appreciate getting that information to the board. Now, there are certain obligations that a role of a delegate and alternate must provide. You need to be well informed on the issues confronting the profession and the MDA. And as I said before, serve as a communicator between your constituency, so the folks back home in your component, and the MDA board. It's critical and requires attending your meetings, as well as keeping up with the MDA communications to relay information both ways. So if you see something, say something, whether coming from the component or from the board, back and forth. And we're going to talk more about opportunities where you can find that information here too. So it says the term of an alternate or delegate is one administrative year to the other, so a House meeting to a House meeting. Attend and participate in the House of Delegates meetings held during annual session. And so those meetings are on the Thursday and on the Saturdays that we have. And later on at the end, we're going to have the list of all the different meetings. And don't worry, you're going to be have all that information to you with times and locations eventually when we nail down all those sites. But what's important when you're looking at those is read those background information provided in advance. This is the one big thing that I think all of our those more seasoned delegates and alternates will talk about, is to read that stuff in advance. If you show up the day of and you haven't read, come on, folks, that's not the job. Go through and read that ahead of time. It's important to do because you can always ask questions ahead of time that you might want to get those answers to. And we'll talk more about reference committee, where if we have answers ahead, that it's a great avenue to get that information out there to everybody, because your question might not be someone else might have the same question as well. Participate actively in discussions. This is whether on the House floor on Thursday or on Saturday, whether in your caucus, or whether when you're out on Wednesday night, even for the Meet the Candidates night that we're going to have as well. Take a look, and by knowing what's going on, by knowing the background information and paying attention to all the opportunities you have for getting information, be strategic in where our organization is headed. Let your component dental society, if they want to submit recommendations to the House, to help that through. And as always, I will tell you that both your governance manager, Michelle Nichols-Cruz, and myself are more than happy to help. I am just a text away or an email. Michelle is always available too during work hours, folks, but she is available to send that in. Both she and I can help and any recommendations you need assistance with in helping craft those for what you want to achieve. Yeah, here's the big stuff. Read the MDA bylaws and the manual of the House of Delegates as a new delegate or alternate. Truth be told, everyone should read it. Just glance through it, get a feeling for it, see what's in there, see what's in the bylaws, so you know. If there's questions, ask. Yeah, I know this year we have a number of resolutions that are going to be coming through that will be bylaws resolutions as well as others. And actually, I've just finished up a revision, and I think we're going to have 3 resolutions that will be part of updating the manual of the House of Delegates too. More roles: attend and participate in any scheduled component regional caucuses before the House meeting and on site. Most times, if they didn't tell you already, your caucus will meet before the House of Delegates. I know that we're even, I think this year, I hope, and I think Region 1, which is the Upper Peninsula, that covers 5 components up there, hoping to meet via Zoom. Because for most times in the past, there were certain groups that just because of geography weren't able to get together prior to the meeting. But I anticipate this year, utilizing Zoom, they'll be able to have that. I think they did some of that last year too. So you'll have a caucus beforehand to sit down. You'll have all the resolutions. You can download those coming up here in March once they're all prepared. But also on site, the Saturday morning there is a meeting. There are meetings all available on Saturday morning, starting typically at 8 o'clock. For each caucus, each region has their own area, and that's where they get together and talk about the upcoming resolutions and what has come out of the RC or reference committee, and they talk about what they want to do. Here we go. Honor the obligation to keep up with the speaker and the board communications on a regular basis throughout the year, and meet the expectation to be participatory by providing feedback and ideas to either myself and or the board. This is where, if you go through on the site, there's a lot of information that's there. All of the minutes that get posted from every committee of the Michigan Dental Association, you have access to go through and see. You can see the board minutes. You have access as well, and you probably have been receiving the delegate digest that we provide after each board meeting. And coming up now, there will be more information, delegate digest, coming up here in February, March, April. And all those will have links as well as typically a video that I provide from that. And actually might be getting a couple videos in the next 2 or 3 that you can watch just to catch up. But all that information is always on the website too. So if you miss it, that's fine. You can always go find it. But find it and take a look at this stuff. Oh, wow, look at that. It's like I remember what the next click was. So you've got the minutes from the board. You got the minutes from committees. Take a look at those. They come out there. You might get with getting notification, go through and check it out and see what's going on. This is keeping up with your association. And it might be something that if you read and you've got an interest in, question, send a note through Michelle, and we can get a hold of the pertinent people if you want to get questions answered or learn more about what that committee is doing. Here we go. Know who your MDA officers and trustees are, and there we go. I always find one spelling error. And communicate ideas, suggestions, issues, and concerns with them. So on the website, you'll see a link that has all of the MDA trustees. And I couldn't screenshot it and put it here. But when you go in there and look under the board, there's a click and a link that you can contact and send a question or suggestions that you have to them. Now, I know that before each of our board meetings, every component has outreach from the Board of Trustees. From one of the members of the board, they reach out to each component and find out what's going on in the component, anything that they need assistance with. And that's one big thing that we have worked on in the last 2 years for communication between the board and the components. So any president or executive director is one that we reach out to. And that's been actually getting good information that we can then generate constructive discussion at the board level. All right, what am I supposed to do? Let's figure this one out. So I conduct the meetings of the House of Delegates on both the Thursday and on the Saturday for your 2 meetings. Responsible for presiding impartially over debate and ensuring that procedural rules are followed. So we're all going to be nice. We're going to use the right way to do it. We'll be gentlemen and ladies, and we will serve our association well that way. And if you get out of line, yep, there's going to be problems. No, there won't be. I'll just ask you not to do that again. Ensuring proper decorum, as I said, is observed during debate. Maintaining order at all times. Yes, we need to have that. And ruling on points of order, answering questions, different areas for what comes up. ensuring that votes are taken accurately and announced, protecting the rights of all members of the House of Delegates, and make appointments to the committees of the House of Delegates, which those will be coming out here soon, and providing training and information regarding parliamentary procedures and support to the House of Delegates, kind of what we're doing tonight. So let's go to the committees of your House of Delegates. First one is the Committee on Credentials, Rules, and Order. These are delegates to that. They are the ones that recommend the current House of Delegates manual be adopted for the current year. If there's any changes, they go through and read through these, as well as myself, to go through if there's any changes that we need to make. So they make recommendations, and these changes to the House of Delegates manual are made on the first day of the House of Delegates, when the first orders of business that we have to manage on that Thursday, and determining recording the number of delegates present at each meeting of the House to certify that a quorum is present. And so they will go through and assess and see, is a quorum present? So that's one part we will manage, that CRO. Hey, there's another acronym I probably need to add in, as a CRO. But this is the group of 3 that assist us. Also, if there's changes to delegations, these individuals that I have selected this year are ones that we can readily get a hold of, and let them know if there's any changes, so they can have discussion regarding credentialing either new delegates. Most importantly is what they do is delegates, but also alternates, because changes occur, life happens. We've had these changes occur the first 2 years we had these as well. And I know from our previous speaker, it does occur every year. So it's a busy group when they get to that meeting. Last, recommending to the House in case of a dispute over the seating, assignment, or certification of a delegate or alternate. So this is the group that meets regarding this. And by seating, it's where, allowing them to sit and be in the House of Delegates, not where they're sitting in the House of Delegates. That's a whole nother thing. All right, other committees. Bylaws, language review, up to 7 delegates and alternates. So this group receives and reviews in advance all the language and the structure of proposed amendments to the bylaws that have been submitted for the consideration of the House. Now, this group identifies any potential conflicts with bylaws provisions from the proposed amendments and assists with consistent formatting to ensure correct entries and the inclusion of additional amendments if necessary to adopt a proposed amendment. This group is going through not to create bylaws changes. This group is reviewing the ones that have been submitted to make sure that that every I is dotted, T is crossed, that everything is in the right location. And so they work in particular with Michelle Nichols-Cruz, and that each area is correct and is understandable to the group, and that we're not missing anything that anywhere else that needs to be within the bylaws noted. As I said, this committee is not empowered to prevent the adoption also of any proposed amendment. They're just making sure that when you look at it, it's grammatically correct and all the right places are there. That's what they're doing. They can't block an amendment from going through to the House, for the House to make that decision. So the last one here is the Reference Committee, or the RC. So the Reference Committee meets at the end of the business day on Thursday. So our meeting of the House, and we'll see this later, I have the whole structure. This is the last meeting of the day on Thursday, following our House meetings that we have. So they go through and they consider all the resolutions assigned to them. They have an open hearing for all members of the association. And so after they have the open hearing, which typically is about an hour, they sequester to a room, just that group, along with our governance manager and any staff or team members from MDA who are needed. And they make a decision regarding what the recommendation the recommendation of the Reference Committee will be based on the preponderance of testimony. And that's a big thing for what the RC will do. And so we'll see more about that here. And I apologize. I see I am speaking fast. I'm just excited about parliamentary procedure. So thank you for that note. So in here, so we'll get the reports. Let me see what's next. I'm going to go back. So the Reference Committee, though, so each resolution, let's say it's a resolution that we're going to change the colors, the official MDA colors, to blue and red. And let's say the Reference Committee hears testimony that half the people like blue, nobody likes red because it's an Ohio State color, and some people say they'd like green instead. And so they need to figure out how they want to adopt that resolution, or whether they recommend for that resolution to be voted down, voted up, or changed. And so they're going to come up with a whole, whether a new idea or have that idea approved or voted down. So we'll get more on that in the future. All right, MDA manuals and documents for the House. Here we go. First, the MDA House of Delegates Manual. So this one is very important. It reviews the commonly used rules of order that a delegate or alternate may encounter and how they are applied in the MDA House of Delegates. Once the fundamentals are mastered, the delegate will be able to participate in the functions of the House with a greater comfort level and effectiveness. So if you open the manual, when you download it, take a look and just read through it. A lot of the information you're seeing here tonight is what's in the House of Delegates manual. And so that the rules of order in there, how to process and how to go through and work with a resolution, those are all in there. Also talks about, who, where, and why. Talks about all these different groups that we have. Next one, the MDA bylaws for what we have. This is what defines the name and purpose of the MDA and how it should work. The bylaws talk about who members are, how officers and committees are chosen, how and when they meet, and the rights and obligations they all have. And last, these are permanent rules, so they need not be changed lightly. So what we see in a lot of it depends on the areas as to what type of vote we will take, and the voting I know will come up later. But any bylaws change requires a 2/3 vote for changing it. Many of our other ones that we will see that are resolutions to the House or from the House, those are a majority vote. So a majority, so 51% need to vote yes for it. But for these with bylaws, they aren't changed lightly, so it takes a 2/3 vote. And by the way, I know in my meeting this past week, when they talked about it, it's not a 2/3 majority. It's kind of an oxymoron there. It's a 2/3 vote. So let's take a look a little bit here with the parliamentary procedure in our House of Delegates in regards to motions. So the procedure is how we used to bring the business to the House of Delegates and process it so some decision can be made in an orderly manner. And it's accomplished through presentation of motions. So really what a motion is a formal proposal presented to the House for consideration decisions. Motions may request an action, express an opinion, seek support on an action taken by others, seek legislation, or establish a policy. So it's a thought. That's what a motion is. And so how we can improve the association or how we do things. So this is the next step talks about what a motion is. And so it's used to bring a specific substantive item of business before the assembly. And the chief characteristic is the following. So it's something that can be debatable. It's amendable, meaning we can change it. It requires a majority vote to pass. And it can also be reconsidered or rescinded later as well. So majority vote, as I said, is a 51% or higher within that. But so that's a main motion. So when we talk main motion at the House, a lot of times we're talking about resolutions, and that's what you'll see when we get everything printed out or sent out via email. So there we go. Main motions, as we said, resolutions or main motions are presented to the House in the form of a motion to adopt a resolution. A resolution simply is a motion in written form. Now, one of the characteristics for some of you, if you've worked in parliamentary groups otherwise, something that is new, and that's through the AIP, the standard code I talked about from before. This is one called Adopt in lieu of. So this is a unique one that I would say probably at least 2/3 or more of the dental associations are using now. But at our House, this motion is utilized only by the reference committee chair to present a resolution to the House that substitutes for another resolution and accounts for the amendment suggested during the reference committee hearing. I'm going to put this also, you'll see this at our Zoom conference. This is where if we have 3 different resolutions that are all in regards to, even one could be this way. If we have a resolution that's on the table and the reference committee feels that from what they heard the testimony, that a better way to phrase that, they will create a new resolution and say they want to adopt the resolution the RC came up with in lieu of the old one. And so you're just substituting, kind of like soccer, hold up the sign, somebody else comes in or out as well. But I'm going to go through this as a tricky one as well, but it's one that you might hear this year. We have used it in the past 2 years as well. It works very well to clean up and reduce the amount of time that we have to dispense with some of these resolutions in our House. there's a couple things that if you go through the manual and you read up and you've been doing stuff in the past with other groups, there are some that we do not have and do not use. For the one part in our House of Delegates, there is no requirement for having a seconding of motions for the House of Delegates. Following the proper movement of a motion, a second is not required in our House. And when this was introduced and amended into your House, the House of Delegates manual, the main reason for that was there's 101 other people. At some point, somebody's going to say yes and let's second it. So as long as the motion is in order, meaning I move that we strike the word rules of order and enter the word whatever, as long as that's in order, we're going to move on to discuss that motion that was made. The second one that's on here is tabling. The motion to table shall not be used in the House of Delegates. And this is also in our House of Delegates manual. Why? Well, it goes back, and I probably should do a little talk on this if I really have free time with it. But I think pretty much tabling is pretty much to kill something. And so we don't use that. We can either vote it down or vote it up or refer it to whomever. But the tabling is one thing we don't use. It's more of a, goes back to Robert's rules and how they would call it. And they say lay upon the table, and that's how to get rid of something for good. It's just kind of messy. So our voting in our House of Delegates. So how do we vote on resolutions? Most of the motions introduced in the House require a majority to be a vote, and some motions require the higher vote, as we talked about. So the ones that require the higher vote, as I said, are bylaws changes, or a 3/4 vote to remove an officer or a trustee from office without cause. Now, one thing that you will realize is that when we're discussing bylaws, with making motions or amendments to it, with those, typically during that debate, is that it only requires a majority vote to amend, but to make any changes to it while we're discussing it. But when we come to the vote on the bylaw itself, it will require a 2/3 vote. So I, as your speaker and as a presiding officer, I'll make sure you'll understand that a vote is a majority vote or if it's a 2/3 vote. So everyone knows what they're voting on. That's really my role, is to make sure you know what you're doing. If there's any question, ask. There'll be a microphone up front, or raise your hand and I'll stop and you can come up and ask your question. If you're not sure what you're voting on, that's one of the big things I'm there for, so you know what we're doing. Now, one other part, and you'll hear this probably most times, it'll be in the first day on Thursday, although we'll have some as well on Saturday, called voting by general consent. Now, the whole idea of general consent is that the presiding officer, and I know for our past 3 presidents for Michigan Dental Association, I've seen them all do this, and this is how you save time when we're deciding routine or non-controversial matters. It means that all members in the assembly are in agreement on a question so that no formal vote is necessary. Now, really what we do as a presiding officer, and I'll say this, if there is no objection, the proposed amendment stands approved. And I'm going to wait and see. If anybody says I object, as it says right here, if anyone objects, agreement is not unanimous, and then we'll take a vote instead. This is where, and sometimes I have seen this, and we've done this in the last year as well. If we have testimony that's going on, or people get up to a resolution on the second day, on the Saturday of the House, and everyone speaks in favor, I might stop and say, if there's no objection to this resolution, it stands approved, or however we want to handle it that way. But to dispense with it, instead of taking a formal vote, especially typically this is on amendments, that if there is no objection, the proposed amendment stands approved, and that's what we'll look at. But if anybody wants to, that one person can say, I object to the general consent, and we'll take a vote. That's no issue with me whatsoever. So how do we vote in the MDA House? Now, we've got a few here. We can take a voice vote. That's when I say the vote is taken orally, so an aye for the positive vote, no for the negative vote. And that's where I'll determine the outcome of the vote by volume of the voices. When in doubt, guess what? We might go to the next step, which is the voting card. So you'll receive your packet, and in your packet, it will have your voting card. And so at times I'll ask for a show of the voting card. So I'll say, those in favor, raise your cards. And then we'll go through and look from up on the dais. And on Saturdays, myself and our legal counsel, our parliamentarian, will be up there. and then I'll go through and say cards down. Then I'll ask and say those opposed, same sign, raise your cards, and we'll look and see. Now, those will be if we're looking for a majority, whether it's a majority or 2/3, but I'll tell you myself, most typically, I'm going to an electronic vote on anything that is a 2/3 vote because I want to know exactly where we're at. So on the show of the voting cards, most of our votes are doing it this way for your house. As I said, positive vote, negative vote. So we get to the electronic vote. So at your when you check in on Saturday for the House of Delegates, you'll be given an electronic keypad, and that is something that I will use. Or if a delegate requests that, anybody can request for an electronic vote. So so I'm going to show you how we're going to capture the vote electronically and verify that everyone has had the opportunity to vote before announcing the outcome. We also have these results displayed on the screen with the exception of election outcomes. So when we use electronic vote, typically it will be, for these will be 1 for yes, 2 for no. And that's what you'll press. It'll be projected on the screen so you can see that, so you know what you're voting on with that. And then we'll wait for the tally. The chief teller will be over there to evaluate that, and they will project that up on the screen for those votes. It's just an easy way for us to do that compared to some of the old ways, especially in the voting for elections where it was a ballot vote, where it was a check ballot, and then they had to go sequester, and we'd hold the House in recess, which really extended the length of the House back in the day. From my first stint on the board, it would take a while to go through and count 102 ballots and making sure that everything was counted correctly. The electronic vote is a great way to dispense with that timing, but we also know that we're getting a quality vote that way. I'm going to go back here, sorry. The other two ways besides because of voice vote, voting cards, and electronic vote, a standing vote or a written ballot. With the standing vote, guess what? You stand up. And this is where you could stand and they will count off. We will have, I do not anticipate us using this because with the electronic vote, we don't have to, but for those who've been in other associations or other groups, you might have had a standing vote in the past or a written ballot. But for timing and with understanding what we want to do and protect the sanctity of certain votes, we might do it that way. For doing the electronic vote is so much easier at this day and age, and I know most associations are switching to that, especially when the size of our house. The written ballot, I do not anticipate us using that at any time. Okay. So let's get down to what the calendar is coming up here. For your calendar, and I put these on your dates, and they are listed in the house, or excuse me, in the Art of Dentistry coming up. Those are all in there, and I forget what page it is, but you can find it. So Wednesday, and I want to say it is class number 2, is the House of Delegates Leadership Training and Meet the Candidates. This is from 5 to 7 p.m. on the Wednesday. First hour from 5 to 6 is more meet the candidates, socialize, get in and see other folks that are coming in for the event. And then from 6 to 7, I'll have a leadership training that'll go through parliamentary procedure. And I'm also going to reach out to folks and see what other topics we might want to look at for this year. I've had 2 other ones that went well. I have what Deb Peters, our previous speaker, had done as also, and trying to find new ways to show you. I always trying to have a review of sorts for about half of it, and then some new things we might not have talked about before as a group. Then, so I'll go out, and after that is the what is it? The Smiles Soiree. The Michigan Dental Association Foundation has their event starting up at 7 o'clock. So they wait for us to get done for the party to begin. And once all of you house members get over there, then they get going. And that goes on into the evening till about 8:30 or 9 o'clock with their dinner. Something great to go hear about what the foundation does on Wednesday. On Thursday is the House of Delegates, the first meeting. We will start at 8:30 a.m. The gavel will go down. And typically this first meeting goes about 2 hours is what we're trending to see. After the House recesses from its first meeting, we will move into, we'll reset the stage, and we will have the trustee candidate forum, which follows that first meeting. As I said, that typically we anticipate, and we just had an election commission meeting last week, we anticipate that taking 1 hour. Within that, from what the election commission, I'm the chair of the election commission, along with Dr. Murrah, who is your president-elect, and also Tony Awesome, who is a House member on the Election Commission. This year, we will be having the trustee candidates will be answering 2 questions. They will not be told what those questions are ahead of time, and following those, answering those questions, they will have 2 minutes to provide their own presentation to the House. Excuse me. Then, following that meeting, we will have the ADA delegate and alternate presentation. So they will be introduced to the House there. We anticipate that taking 20 minutes. Following the ADA delegation presentation, we're going to have lunch. And we'll put a timer up on the screen. The lunches will be provided for all House members. We'll have those in the back so you can grab a lunch, so you don't have to leave the room and run anywhere to go get something. And then we anticipate trying to have that reference committee hearing starting at approximately 12:30. We like to have everything run on as close to time as we can. We might be running ahead. Last year, I know we were running ahead going into the lunch, so they were trying to get that there early. That reference committee hearing will go probably about an hour is what we're timing out for it. But we need to make sure the voices are heard and questions are asked to the reference committee to think about. Now, Saturday morning, we talked about that before. The reference committee reports will be delivered to all the caucus rooms. So this is a written report. It is not every resolution printed out again. It's the highlights. So this is like the cliff notes of what's going on and what the reference committee is giving back to the House to dispense with the resolutions from what they had on Thursday and the discussion had on Thursday afternoon. Now, to let you know, these electronic versions will be for sure will be available by Friday morning. Michelle Nichols-Cruz really like to have those out Thursday evening. So as soon as that reference committee gets done, and if they're starting at 2 o'clock, last 2 years they've been done by 4:30 with getting those, but it might go longer. You never know. But so they will be available Friday morning, but probably they will be available to you online Thursday night. So you can take a look at those. And most times Thursday night when people are out to dinner or doing whatnot, they'll get the email that comes on and everyone starts talking about the reference committee stuff. So Saturday morning as well, the component caucus meetings are in the morning. Talked about those before. So that's when you get together and talk. And so those typically from 8 until noon, 8 until 11:30 or 8:30 to 11:30. Each group has their own decisions as to when and how long they'll meet. And then everyone's ready to go for the second meeting of the House of Delegates, and that starts at 1 o'clock. So gavel down at 1. So here on the end slide, and you'll have all this information, is my number, my email, Michelle Nichols-Cruz, your governance manager, her phone there at the central office, as well as her email. And you all receive those, I know, in both of them. I always like to have this here as well with our information. But again, any question that comes up, text me, call me. If you text me and I haven't texted with you before, just let me know who you are and where you're from, and I can help you out with those answers. If it's by cell phone, that's usually the best way to get a hold of me. Email is great though too. I always have that as well. And same with Michelle. Always we do our best to be responsive. And if we need to connect, she and I do, we will get together and talk by phone. We are probably at this point speaking at least 3 days a week on what's going on so we can be prepared for your House. Okay, let me back out of this. There's my last slide. Okay, good. I knew it was there somewhere. Okay. All right. So, got questions here, and I'll answer Dr. Goodsell's first. I have no idea who Mitch Mack is. Sorry, Dr. Goodsell, on that one. Seriously, should a delegate wish to, again, submit an amendment to the bylaws of the organization? Ideally, when would you like to review, and what is the drop dead date for it to arrive with this? Okay, with that one, pursuant to our bylaws, and let me pull that, I believe it's a 60-day window that we need to have those submitted before. Thank you, Dr. Goodsell. Now I get it, Mitch McConnell. Thank you. Okay. I am not, remember I'm a speaker, I'm apolitical on everything. But we're at the 60-day window. Oh, thank you, Michelle. That's right. Bylaws changes is 45 days. That was an amendment from back when I was in the old school. So Michelle, thank you for the 45 days for bylaws changes. So you'll back that up from 45 days prior to the first meeting of the House. Michelle, do we have an official date there? I know Michelle usually has these memorized, right, Michelle? So that would probably be, I'm going to say sometime mid-March. There she goes, mid-March. All right. First to Dr. Berger, is this presentation on the MDA website? It will be on the MDA website. This will probably be out. As Michelle is recording this, we'll submit this over to our marketing and our video people, and they'll edit and make me sound better. Maybe they'll slow down my speaking as well. So for those of you, and I know for some of you who served on the board with me, I do speak quickly. I want to make sure we get the information in. I apologize for going quick there. I just got excited with that, but it will be on the website as well as our previous and future presentations all are on there to Dr. Burt. Changes versus amendments to Tom. Yep, Dr. Goodstill, same notice time, 45 days as to when that is with that. All right. Other questions? Otherwise, I'll start asking questions of all of you and see about that, right? But again, I can tell you the opportunities are good. The opportunities to serve are coming up here. And again, as to what Dr. Berger's question was right on, this information we want to have is always available to you on the site. It takes a little bit with the videos to go through and edit. And that's the one part we do need to take time with. Getting used to using technology like this is important. But also that's one things I've enjoyed doing is the video side of it. I would say to take a look, and in the most recent Delegate Digest, I was lucky enough to go through and ask Dr. Peters, our former speaker and immediate past president, to come in, and we've shot 3 videos that we're going to be releasing out over the next 3, or previous one that we just released, as well as the next 2 Delegate Digest. And it's in regards to parliamentary procedure, some nuances of what the Michigan Dental Association has, and that's one thing I really enjoyed doing that with her. And so we could talk about some things that came up last year in our discussion, and try to address issues or questions that came up from the House survey work that we did following the House. So we wanted to get those done. So, and yes, there's Michelle's notes. Links to all videos on YouTube are always in the Delegate Digest. So you'll be seeing that as well. So let's see. Yeah, we're trying to update those. Again, for those of you, and I see a few of you who were in the House last year, like I said, this presentation, and I will go back and fix the spelling error in through there. But a lot of this information, especially for new delegates and alternates, is there. You know, one question I might ask for those of you, and this is where you will have to click in, for how many of you, what other information would you like to learn more about for the delegate alternate training that's going to be coming up in March? Is there something that's of interest to you? Something you've always questioned? So I can have those, because I want to prepare for what you want to do or what you want to learn more about. Because for me, I did not have the AIP manual, by the way. There it is right there. I have 2 digital versions and the hardcover as well that I take with me. But if there's any area you can think about, you know, we will go through, and actually I have a new presentation I put together for how we will process motions, or how we do process motions, not a new way that we're doing it, but just to review, so you know how to process through it. And so in particular at that meeting, there'll be some basic ones. Last year I worked on a new one. I liked the way it felt. But the in-person training that we'll be doing in April for that Wednesday night is one that I'm looking forward to. And it's actually a way that I just picked up this past weekend, where they had a table of 8. Okay, so it's a geeky parliamentary thing, but there's a table of 8 of us. And we started with the same motion and then worked around different parts of it. You know, I moved to amend by inserting this and deleting that. And so you get to hear it a few times. And it might be where we do something like that with the group, because I think in the past we've always had it where we have 8 random people pulled up there, and that's why. We've tried different things that way, but I want to engage and get you folks in there. But let's see about that. for how we can do it. All right, I will ask any other questions, or what else? Is there any ideas that you have? Let me know, because I think it's important for us, so I can provide what information you'd like to see. And if you don't want to send it now, you can always send it to me later. I think each of you, you've got access to my phone. Send it to me, or email it to me, or let Michelle know. All right. If there is nothing else, I'll say, what is the presiding officer? No. I'll ask you parliamentary questions. But anyway, again, I do want to thank everyone out and for coming in here this evening, taking the time out of your busy schedules to listen in and hopefully learn a little bit about your association and what your goal is with the MDA House of Delegates. As I said, I always work on it. You'll see a difference. So when I'm at the House, my speaking is more measured in these evenings. As you all know, when we get into the end of the day, we'll roll through stuff. But again, thank you so much. Also, big thank you to Michelle Nichols-Cruz for taking time from her evening to help me and get this out there. And I look forward to each and every one of you at our meeting in March on the Zoom, as well as seeing at the House of Delegates. Thanks a lot and have a great night.